Alright, welcome back to Comic Book History, episode 95. Last episode, I updated Richard Rader and Venom. This time, I'm doing one Iron Man. Yes, a follow-up character I basically talked about way back in episode 4. So what's happened since then? Well, after the events of, basically it was back in 2016 when I did this. So, let's see. I believe Bendis has started his run for Iron Man at that point. So, Bendis did his run for about 2 years. Had a very weird run, basically, where it was like a team-up book. And they launched a spin-off. First, Iron Man International, which lasted for 7 issues, mind you. Yes, 7 issues. And then it got replaced with Infamous Iron Man, where it was Doctor Doom in the armor as Iron Man. Though this era did introduce the character of Riri Williams. A character thought a good idea to have her teacher be racist to her just for her motivation. Yeah, I do not know why in the world. I mean, she was introduced at the tail end of one volume because Civil War II had to happen, so let's put Iron Man in a coma for 2 years. Yep, let's put him in a coma for 2 years for reasons. And have her take over the book. A book called Iron Man, and Riri is the main character. Where at one point they tried to take away armor, and eventually Blade got involved. Yes, Blade himself popped up in this book, which seems very baffling, but Blade already showed up in the Pages of Defenders, so Blade was basically familiar with Bendis. So, thanks to him, and apparently there was also like this new shield popping up, because after Secret Empire, they shut down S.H.I.E.L.D., but yet they were going to start up a new S.H.I.E.L.D., which didn't go anywhere at all. Tony Stark apparently got out of his coma and got cloned himself for some reason. Not sure why. And then, of course, during this run, basically where you had Rhodey come back to life, had been dead for 2 years. Yeah, due to some other cloning process. And the second time he's ever been cloned ever in comic books. First time was actually in his own book, and now in this book in particular. Comes back via cloning after he got killed by frickin' Thanos. Yes. Of course, Riri herself, after this run wrapped up, she got her own brief solo book, which lasted for a year. She since popped up in Champions, and hasn't much since then. But what about Iron Man himself? Well, after Bendis left the book, then we had Dan Slott take over the book, which I still have this there, the reason why that Marvel gave him the book, because, excuse me, I'm guessing Marvel must have really enjoyed Iron Man's guest star appearance in Amazing Storm, which Bendis wrote it, so he got the book. Also, this book brought back Bethany Cabe, which is the first time she came back to the book since Matt Fraction wrote the book. Stark International was relaunched as Stark Unlimited, where it was basically the book also with AI stuff. The book itself lasted for a surprising 20 issues. Bendis' time on the book was to combine like 26 issues across 2 volumes of 13 issues, and then like 8 issues of renumbering, because book ever launched at issue number, I think it was like 700. Yeah, 700 issues for Iron Man, which surprisingly if I got that far. And somebody might be asking, what was the last series to have 700 issues? Kind of Incredible Hulk, despite the fact they never celebrate 700 issues without one, but that was kind of the last one to have one. So you could probably think like as like every single major comic book across Marvel Comics had 700 issues. Well, I would say the most recent one was probably Uncanny X-Men. Yeah, because the final issue of X-Men Volume 6 was deemed to be issue 700 for Uncanny X-Men. Yep. So let's see what else. Iron Man himself, well, when Doc Doom took over after the events of Secret Wars, he was a supporting character in Bendis' Iron Man, where he got his face fixed, and then he became Iron Man, which, this is really weird. The book never explained of how the heck got the armor anyways, of what conversation Tony had with them. It just randomly happened. In the case of International Iron Man, that book basically, because the whole revelation of Tony Stark was adopted, so they introduced his mom, who was a singer, And then by issue 100, he introduces his father, who was Agent Hydra. Yes, Tony Stark's biological father, who was not Howard Stark, is a Hydra agent. I'm like, why the heck would he do that for? Now, my guess is probably... Now, the thing is with Ben, this fall with the whole revelation, that Tony basically was adopted. That was Karen Gillian's doing. Yeah, that was not Bendis. He basically probably had the force to do that. So, the book was interesting. Of course, they had Alex Blade do Infamous Iron Man, which then that story got continued in Iron Man. Then the story got read at the 100 where his face got damaged again. Then he became Doctor Doom again. Yeah, it's like somebody really want to hit the reset button with that character so badly just because Bendis was leaving the company. Now, I've heard recently Bendis has come back. So, under Slott, basically, it was very interesting under him. Weirdly enough, all but about a handful of issues not written by Slott. Yes, for some weird reason, during the War Realms tie-in, one of two books do this, along with Venom, Marvel decided to have it where, let's not have Slott write these issues, let's have Gail Simone write Iron Man. Which seems a very baffling idea, but she did the one story. Of course, Colin Bunn returned Venom, at least he had history with the character. Gail Simone and Iron Man would seem like a very weird choice. Which I think was the first book she worked on since Domino's cancellation. And after that book, she didn't work on a single Marvel book again that I can think of until she worked on Kenny X-Men. Which came out very recently in the last couple years. So, the book itself, Iron Man of Dan Slott, was leading to an event known as Iron Man 2020. Which, of course, had Tony Stark's brother, the actual son of Howard and Maria Stark, become a massive villain. Become like a new Iron Man 2020, despite the fact there already was an Iron Man 2020. And by the way, his real name was Arno. Just like the other one. And I'm like, why in the world would they create a modern version of basically what was attempted to put was a suit villain from the 1980s from the future? Yeah. So, he had this massive thing that was like this big, huge robot going to attack the Earth. And it was a hologram. Yep, they revealed this issue 6. Also, they revealed the end issue, like, Tony Stark might be artificially created. Also, during this run, for some weird reason, they had Tony date Wasp. Yes, Wasp became a supporting character in the pages of Iron Man. They kind of broke up, but then they kind of got together after Iron Man 2020. And no follow-up. Basically, the relationship was completely forgotten when Christopher Cantwell took the book, which book was a lot better than him. Oh my gosh. The book was amazing. Lasting for a whopping 24 issues, had an annual, eventually a miniseries, where for the first 19 issues, it was a book of Karvak, where you have basically Iron Man team with a bunch of C-listers that take on the returning Michael Karvak, a Avengers villain. Yeah, bringing people like, I think it was like Spider-Woman, Frogman, all these other characters. Because it was a weird thing Marvel was doing at that point where Marvel was taking these characters doing nothing and made them like basically like a good supporting cast. Heck, this book practically, I think it was, in this book, they kind of brought back, I think it was Jim Hammond, but they kind of altered to make him like Iron Man for some weird reason. I don't know why, but they did. Yeah, it was by far one of the most weirdest things related to the character. Yeah, and then of course the whole process got reversed in the pages of I think it got reversed by Zardesky and Invaders, where they made Human Torch like the way he's supposed to be. Yes. So yeah, and then of course Karvak is defeated, the Space Fans disband. Also to this book, Tony started being in a relationship with Patsy Walker for some weird reason, which had an issue where he proposed to her, and then he went to rehab because he got drunk again. And then by the end of the book, this is really weird. So, Riri got her hands. Yeah, she popped up in this book. Where somehow, some way, she found a way to get her hands on the 10 rings. Which I think anybody thought those things were destroyed during the that Techno City arc, during the last arc. It was the last arc of Karen Gillian's run. Somehow they came back. Oh, by the way, Mandrill was revived and then killed off in the opening issue of Matthew Rosenberg's relaunch of Punisher. So he never got a chance for Iron Man again, which you're like, what? Yeah. And also, and it's interesting, so one thing I love about Christopher Campbell, aside from the good supporting cast they had, also the fact Karvik was leading a group of Iron Man villains, which he's the first person to do that since managed that in Matt Fraction's run for Iron Man, which was almost 10 years prior to this. The book also had Alex Ross doing the covers, which was awesome. An amazing run that practically saved the book. And then he left. Yep. Christopher Chantwell left the book. The reason? I have no idea. And then, this is interesting, so then the book got relaunched under Gary Duggan. Yes. And under him, because Duggan was writing X-Men at this point, let's have basically the book connected to X-Men for some weird reason. We're like, we had this one guy who took over Tony's company, a hostile takeover, it just happened on panel, and he was kind of the main villain of this run. Yeah, he was. I'm not really sure why this was. Where, if you read this whole run, you're probably like, is there any actual Iron Man villains pop up in this run? No. Not really. Basically, Gary Duggan brought in a character from his X-Men book named Fulong, who was mad at the X-Men for basically terraforming Mars, even though that was kind of him. Yeah. And for some weird reason, he became a recurring villain in Iron Man, and he disappeared once the book wrapped up. Though Tony did get his comic back in by the end of the book. The book was interesting what it was. I liked the fact it was called autobiography for the first story arc. It's not necessarily a bad volume per se. Oh no, it's not terrible. At one point, Tony married Emma Frost in this run, which of course, here's the weird thing about this. I'm sure people remember this really well when it comes to basically this book at this period of time. So, just prior to this, Kamala Khan got killed off in Zeb Wells' Amazing Spider-Man. And then this cover was leaked. Issue 10. Where there's Miss Marvel in a tiny little corner. Yep. Yeah, for some reason she was at this wedding. And by the way, issue 10 was a connected cover to an issue of X-Men. Yes. Not really sure exactly why. And then basically this is also a book where, Wilson Fisk is now the White King of the Hellfire Club, and yeah, and somehow, some way in this run, you have Emma Frost with Tony this whole book. And then they kind of dissolve their marriage by the end of the book. Yes, for some weird reason, they got married, and then they got divorced. Not really sure exactly why. Well, I get the fact it was on the cover stuff, but yeah, and it was all fake. Yep. And also the fact they brought in a Crimson, basically for the last issue of Duggan's run, he brought back a character, one of the Crimson Dynamos, who had not been seen in Iron Man. This Crimson Dynamo, that is, had not been seen Iron Man since issue 317 back in 1995. So by the time we return to this book, this is first appearance in almost 30 years. And then the book got relaunched under this brand new writer, Spencer Ackerman. You're probably thinking, who the heck is this guy? We'll be discussing his trades in the future. Talk about that. So, writing-wise, he just wrote this book. Apparently, he won the Pulitzer Prize for some reason. So, they had these new board of directors for Stark Unlimited, where the members are like Jack Cunnan Jr., who's a son of a character from, I kid you not, a character who was a creation of Daniel O'Connor, who was killed off at the end of that Vince Iron Man run back in 2008. And it was mentioned in the book, like, oh, like, Tony might be, like, is he mad basically how to his dad? There's also a woman, the guy named Zhou Wong, some Chinese guy got killed off next issue, the same issue. And also, there was also Melinda May. Now, this was very, very offensive when I saw this. Now, why in the world that was as offensive? Well, when the book came out, for some weird reason, I do not know why in the world, basically, that the writer did this for, he decided to make Melinda May black and make her like the actress to play Martha Jones from Doctor Who. Because, let me point out though, this one was supposed to be Chinese. And I saw this, and I'm like, really, Marvel? They claimed that this woman was Melinda May. I look at this woman, and I'm like, no, that is not Melinda May. That is a random black woman that you claim to be Melinda May, and they had the audacity to call her this. And then, for some weird reason, 2 issues later, she's Chinese again. And then, by the end of the book, the book recently wrapped up after only 10 issues. Yes, by far, the shortest Iron Man series to date. Actually, it's actually a little bit longer than Super Iron Man, but still. For a book called Iron Man, the book lasted for a whopping 10 issues. Yeah, 10 issues. And the book became involved with the whole One World Under Doom, which is not selling well for Marvel. Oh my gosh, yeah, it is not selling well at all. How bad it is, you might ask? Well, back in March, issue 3 made number 8 of top 10. And guess what the top 10 was nominated by? Batman All the Absolute Universe books. Yes. I don't know exactly what in the world that the writer was thinking. And now the book is being relaunched again as part of this Age of Revolution stuff. As Iron and Frost, where they're apparently revisiting something they just had just not even 2 years ago. Where apparently this is in the future. It's a post-apocalyptic wasteland. And somehow Frost and Emma Frost and Iron Man are drawn together for some weird reason. And I look at this, I'm like, why the heck is Iron Man involved with Emma Frost again? Like, not Emma Frost. Why is this involved with the X-Books? And those of you curious, though, about his tension with the Avengers. Like, those of you might be asking, excuse me, Nick, is he still part of the Avengers? Yes, he is. As far as I can tell, he is still part of the Avengers. Well, he's also he's also the leader of the West Coast Avengers. Yep, he brought back the West Coast Avengers with Blue Bolt. Yes, Blue Bolt. At one point, they call him Wonder Man or even Living Laser. There was also Firestar, who's out of retirement now. The Jessica Drew Spider-Woman, Ultron, and War Machine. You think, wait, Firestar? I thought she retired. Well, she came back in the X stuff. Yep. But you might be thinking, is Tony part of the main lineup? He is. Even this book was relaunched after Jason Aaron did, in my opinion, a very good run. I love his run for Iron Man. For Avengers. And then we have Jed MacKay as the writer of the book, which I'm actually really enjoying the Jed MacKay stuff. Currently, the lineup is comprised of, well, the leader is Carol Danvers with Black Panther, the Sam Wilson Captain America, Impossible City, that's the city they live in, Iron Man, Scarlet Witch, Storm, and the Vision. Which, yeah, it's a very interesting lineup, and those of you curious, though, is Avengers going to be tied up in the whole thing related to the whole thing with the X-Men stuff? Oh, God, no. Yeah, basically, as far as I can tell, there's no signs of it leaving anytime soon. Also, Tony is also involved with another Avengers team. He's on 3 Avenger teams. He's also on... Well, what was Alcoholics Anonymous? Oh yeah, the group basically in Camp Welter was Space Friends, which is comprised of Frogman, Gargoyle, Hickman, Hellcat, Human Torch, Jim Hammond, Miss Knight, Scarlet Spider, who's actually Kane. Actually, Ben Riley, that was Kane. And War Machine. Yeah. But... oh yeah, apparently he's part of Alcoholics Anonymous. Yep. Because he apparently used a drink, and then basically Marvel keeps going back and forth with that over the past several years. Like, oh, he drinks and he doesn't drink, and... yeah. But that's that. But not much else to say about it, okay? So yeah, that's pretty much it for the video. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications. Next up is going to be, well, Backman Said Built. Okay, next video. Bye.